Hello again and welcome. Thank you for tuning in. My name is Sylvie, and this is the Vacant Lot Podcast. This is a show where I recap and relive some of my favorite moments from one of my favorite TV shows growing up, Hey Arnold. I'd like to start out this particular show by saying happy birthday. It's the 20th anniversary of the series this month. Yes, and October 7th of 1996, 20 years ago, the first episode of Hey Arnold was aired on Nickelodeon. Hey Arnold had the typical run for Nickelodeon animated series, typical by way of 3 to 5 seasons is usually common, unlike the notable exceptions, the Rugrats, SpongeBob SquarePants, Fairly Odd Parents that have gone well past that number. And I think at this point in time, Fairly Odd Parents has actually surpassed the big 1-0. 10 seasons. Wow. But anyway, we're here to talk about Hey Arnold, obviously. So yeah, Hey Arnold had 5 seasons to its name. 5 distinct seasons, actually. Every season had its own unique flavor and just vibe to it. I've mentioned how partial I am to the first season in particular. It's a good foundation, it's a good starting point for the series. It definitely looks different from the other 4 seasons. It employs a heavy use of colored pencils in its backdrops. You compare a typical episode from season 1 to a episode in season 5 where it's all digital paint, I think at that point. The season 1 episodes just look grittier. They look more unique because of the colored pencil backdrops, and I've always really loved that about the earlier episodes. I also like the way Arnold's portrayed. The Arnold you get in season 1 is noticeably different than the Arnold you get in season 5. And that's not even a comment on character development, because the character doesn't really develop that much. Arnold is 9 years old throughout the entire series. When I talk about difference in Arnold, season 1 Arnold is the only Arnold that's voiced by Lane Torren, or as he was known at the time when the show was originally released and how he's listed in the credits, Torrin Caudell. His character's just different. Arnold is portrayed more as a daydreamer, almost like a similar Nicktoon character, Doug. He's perceived as the strong yet silent type. He doesn't seem very chatty, but he's very purposeful. He's very action-oriented. There's a lot of things that he sees something that needs to be done and he'll just do it. It's kind of hard to explain, but in the later seasons, Arnold's just kind of maneuvered or pushed to and fro depending on what the plot requires. Sometimes Arnold is just there, whereas Arnold seems to be a bit more of the master of his own destiny, so to speak, in the earlier season. So yeah, there's a lot of good things going for season 1, and if you haven't figured it out today, I will be talking about my favorite first season episodes of Hey Arnold. This will be a top 5 list. I have a few caveats. First thing I'd like to point out, and I think it's been also briefly mentioned in the Hey Arnold Hey podcast, there's a difference in original run and broadcast run when it comes to episodes. The original first season was actually 38 episodes. That would be, I suppose, 18 11-minute episodes, and then the 2 holiday episodes, Arnold's Christmas and Arnold's Valentine. Well, if you check the website and if you check how it's actually arranged, only 26 of the original 38 episodes are considered first season. The other episodes that weren't considered part of the first season were moved to the second and third season. So there are 12 episodes that are actually first season, were actually made for later seasons. I'll list those off right now. So the 12 episodes that are first season but technically aren't are Helga's Boyfriend, Crush on Teacher, Hall Monitor, Harold's Bar Mitzvah, Coach Wittenberg, Four-Eyed Jack, Tour de Pond, Teacher Strike, Runaway Float, Partners, Part-Time Friends, and BioSquare. So those are all first season episodes, but they were actually distributed in season 2 or season 3. Got it? Good. So I bring this up because I'm purposely going to omit these episodes from my list. I know it might be a bit controversial, but the reason why I say this is even by looking at these episodes and even growing up, when I saw these episodes and you would ask me what the season was, I would actually say season 2. Because to me, they felt more like season 2 episodes. And I think part of the reason I believed that was because if you look at the animation style of the first few episodes of the first season and then the final episodes of the first season, it's dramatically different. That comes into play because they had multiple animation houses working on the first season. So first few episodes of season 1 are noticeably cruder than the later episodes. The later episodes actually have a bit of a transitional look to it. It's not bad. It's kind of a cross between the old original style, the cruder episodes, and it's slowly making its way into the more refined look of, I guess, season 2 and season 3. But it's kind of that weird in-between look where it's still using the colored pencils and the backdrops, but the character designs are fleshed out more. So it's a really, I'll give season 2 that. It has very unique looking episodes. But for that reason, and because to me they don't feel like season 1 episodes, I'm purposely omitting the 12 episodes that I mentioned from the list. So they may show up in the season 2 list that I make, but for the purposes of this show, I'm not going to include them. I'm also not going to include any of the holiday episodes. This might be another controversial decision, but the reason why I don't want to include Arnold's Christmas or Arnold's Valentine, while they are good episodes, and I can guarantee you a lot of people would easily say Arnold's Christmas is one of the best season 1 episodes, they are holiday episodes. They evoke a sort of timelessness that kind of transcends the season. What I'm trying to say is, even though Arnold's Christmas and Arnold Valentine are season 1 episodes, they kind of transcend being like confined to season 1, even in the way of when it would be played. I remember when I used to watch the show, they would play the episodes in sequential order. I can't recall if they would show Arnold's Christmas in sequential order, if they would skip over it, but regardless of where the series was in its run, they would play Arnold's Christmas around Christmas. So in a way, it's kind of outside the realm of its own season. And I guess you could say the same thing about Arnold's Valentine. So for those reasons, the 2 holiday episodes will not be included on this list. So I bring this up now so there's no angry letters to me saying, why didn't you add Arnold's Christmas? Because I grappled so hard to about putting Arnold's Christmas on this list. I think up until maybe an hour before I record, I was like, do I put Arnold's Christmas on the list? Do I not? And ultimately I decided no, and I'm sticking to that. So the episodes that you're getting are season 1 through and through. Will justify my choices. You may agree with me. If you don't, that's cool, but please don't crucify me. As I said before in the previous shows, I am just a fan. Okay, so now that we've got that out the way, I'd like to get started. So first episode I've chosen for the list of best first season episodes is The Haunted Train. So Haunted Train is the 3rd urban legend episode I've discussed on the show. I've mentioned in previous shows Stoop Kid and Wheezin' Ed. Those are the other 2 urban legend episodes that I've mentioned. This is another urban legend episode, but it's actually not an urban legend known by Gerald. This urban legend is told by Arnold's grandpa. Basic plot of the story is Arnold and Gerald are bored. This is a time before the internet and iPhones and tablets, so they're bored. They don't know what to do, so Grandpa decides to tell them the tale of the mad conductor of Engine 25. He tells them about this crazy conductor that ran his train off the tracks and ended up, killing himself. So the other kids in the neighborhood listen as Grandpa tells this story about how the train is haunted, and every so often it pulls into this old abandoned train station and it captures these unsuspecting victims and takes them down to the fiery underworld. You have to keep in mind that this is Nickelodeon and it's a kid-friendly show, and barring examples on another Nicktoon Ren and Stimpy, a kid show's kind of has to skirt over the mention of HE double hockey sticks. So there's no mention of the devil or anything like that. He's called the Red Hot Demon himself. The Red Hot Demon himself is who they meet when they ride this train. So after Grandpa tells the story and has got this crazy ideas that mix in her head, Arnold, Gerald, and Helga decide that they're going to either prove or debunk this particular urban legend. They're all going to go together and see if it's true. So they go to the old station, they wait, and a train actually does show up, and believe it or not, it's Engine 25. So they enter the train, and as they're traveling, they experience all the different signs that Grandpa had warned meant that they were on the haunted train. The smell of rotting eggs, horrible ear-splitting music, being sucked in by the light. So all these things happen. Their imaginations start going wild. Helga goes buck wild. She goes nuts. But in the end, they find out that the train isn't in fact taking them to the fiery underworld. No, it's actually taking them to a steel mill that picks up relief workers for the midnight shift. So the urban legend is seemingly debunked, but Grandpa makes a sly comment at the end after he picks up Arnold, Gerald, and Helga. And, I didn't say it wasn't haunted. And then we see at the very end the actual ghost of the conductor singing the end credit theme for this episode. I like this episode because it's a rare episode where Arnold, Gerald, and Helga are working together as a team. The only other time you see that sort of teamwork would be in the Hey Arnold movie, but most times it's either Arnold and Helga working together as a team or Gerald and Arnold working together as a team. Very seldom do the three of them work together, which, it's a shame. I would have liked to see more episodes like that. Obviously, Gerald and Helga aren't the closest of friends, so it doesn't make much sense for them to be hanging out so much. There's a great scene in this episode where Gerald sings about the haunted train. It's probably one of my favorite moments in the first season. There's a brief appearance of Brainy. Helga doesn't go through any of her soliloquy moments, but that doesn't stop Brainy from stalking her to the depths of the fiery underworld, or in this case, the back of the car and Engine 25. So there's a lot of good things going for this episode. It's atmospheric. The colors that they use as the three kids wait for the train are nice. I guess the best detail that I've always liked about it is they're waiting at night at this train station, and the white sleeves on her shirt have a blue tinge to them, so I don't know if that was intentional. It gives you the feel that they're actually out waiting in the dark. So I think it's a solid first season episode. Second episode I would like to talk about. I'm actually going to group the next two together. They're not exactly similar episodes, but they have the same sort of theme. The next two I want to talk about are Arnold's Hat and Operation Ruthless. They both have completely different plots, but they're similar in a way that I'll explain later. So in Arnold's Hat, Arnold loses his precious hat that he's had since he was a little child. Helga finds the hat and is elated because then she has the final piece de resistance to add to her Arnold shrine. A shrine that she's made, sculpted in the likeness of Arnold out of a lot of questionable things, such as chewing gum and earwax and stuff. So the piece de resistance is the hat, which happens into her possession. So only when she realizes Arnold's miserable without having his hat does she decide to give it back to him. And well, that's basically the plot of the episode. There's not a whole lot that goes on in there. In the other episode, Operation Ruthless, Arnold meets for the first time Ruth P. McDougal, which is the 6th grade girl I've mentioned in an earlier episode. She's the 6th grader Arnold is holding a candle for. So he meets her at the cheese fair and he's determined to try to get to know her better. Meanwhile, Helga is using all her power to prevent Arnold from getting close to Ruth, and that's the basic premise of Operation Ruthless. The reason why I grouped these two episodes together, as I've mentioned in the past, the show is called Hey Arnold, and there's a lot of episodes that center around Arnold, but there's also a lot of episodes that center around the other character, Helga G. Pataki. There have been debates if Helga is not actually the real main character of Hey Arnold. And part of the reason that becomes an argument is not only are there a lot of Helga episodes, almost as many episodes devoted solely to Helga as opposed to solely to Arnold's family, but also a lot of times when they do a Helga Arnold episode, especially in the first season, they share a lot of screen time. Usually the episode is split into two separate plots that intersect. Another good example of that would be Spelling Bee, where both kids are trying to win the spelling bee and both kids have their own unique motivation, but they kind of split the time equally between Arnold's drive to become the winner and Helga's, well, just kind of being pestered into it by her blowhard dad, Big Bob Pataki. But there's a lot of episodes that divest the time like that. So it's easy to make that argument. Well, is the show actually about Arnold or is it more about Helga? Maybe they're both the main characters. And I'm more of the belief that it is, even though the show is called Hey Arnold, even though Arnold's name is in the title, who is saying Hey Arnold? Probably Helga. They're both equally the main characters of the show. But anyway, back to Arnold's Hat and Operation Ruthless. So yeah, in Arnold's Hat, Arnold's kind of kind of boring subplot where he's trying to get a kite to fly. I think it's a nice little subtle nod to Peanuts or to Charlie Brown. There's always a running gag in Charlie Brown that he wanted to fly a kite. So Arnold's trying to fly a kite by attaching spatulas to it and more tails or more knots in the string. Yeah, it's a nice little throwback. Meanwhile, Helga's more interesting subplot, we see how far her obsession with Arnold goes, where she has this immaculate shrine hidden within her closet. Her main goal is to make it so much in Arnold's likeness that she can, I guess, have her weird fantastical fantasies with it. So the two plots sort of kind of intersect when Arnold's hat gets blown away as he's trying to fly a kite. Helga gains possession of it, and then Arnold's miserable for the rest of the episode because he feels like he's just not himself, and it takes the cajoling of his best friend Gerald to finally get him out of the house and live his life without the hat, which is kind of redundant because literally in the next scene, Arnold bumps into Helga. She has a hat, he just basically takes it, and that's the end of the episode. I like the episode because it shows more of Arnold's character, and it sets that foundation of the obsession and the infatuation of Helga's character towards Arnold. In Operation Ruthless, there again are two separate plots. Arnold wants to get Ruth P. McDougal's attention, so with the help of Gerald, he does all these things to try to get closer. He buys her a cheese kebab. He tries to get with her in the Hall of Mirrors. He tries to sync it up so that he's riding the swan in the Tunnel of Love. All these things fail because of Helga's subplot where, with the help of her friend Phoebe, she tries to sabotage all these attempts. She ruins the cheese kebab. She gets in the way, and a lot of these... Ultimately, her plan kind of works, but in the end, Arnold still is infatuated with Ruth and is still determined to want to get close to her. Whereas the episode ends with Helga just kind of standing alone. Even her friend Phoebe ditches her for Gerald, and the lights just turn off and she's all by herself at the cheese fair. I like this episode probably even a bit more so than Arnold's hat, though they're similar. The key difference between Operation Ruthless and Arnold's hat is whereas Arnold's hat has a more of an upbeat, happy ending where Arnold gets his hat back and Helga gets physical contact with Arnold. In Operation Ruthless, Helga goes through all this stuff, all this pain and suffering. Like in the end, she ends up in a neck brace, and even though she wins, she still loses, and she doesn't get any closer to what she wants. And it's just really sad. And that's the key thing I admire a lot about Hey Arnold. Not every episode is a happy ending. There's a lot of episodes that actually just kind of end. And I think Operation Ruthless is one of the first ones where you're like, aw. But I like how there's a lot of different endings to show that don't baby viewers. And this is a nudge to people who are getting further along in the series. Like, yeah, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. There's going to be disappointment and sadness in this show. And then referring back to Arnold's hat, I almost completely forgot that twinge of not so much sadness, but that first sort of awareness you get in Arnold's hat is Arnold flashes back to when he was a baby and he's in the crib. His mom and dad give him the hat for the first time. And then I think at that point, that's the first time the viewer's like, hey, yeah, wait a second. Where is Arnold's mom and dad? And it won't get touched upon until much, much later in the series, but it kind of plants that seed of curiosity and that sort of knowledge that there probably is a story there, and it probably isn't going to be very happy. But it's an episode like Operation Ruthless in season 1 that sets that tone where it's not always going to be optimistic and happy. There is going to be some sadness. So I think the two episodes complement each other very well. Even though they're not aired together, they're in completely different shows. They're both like solid first season episodes for similar and for different reasons. The next episode I want to talk about is the baseball. Baseball might seem like an odd choice for an episode, but hear me out. So basic premise of the baseball, Arnold is playing baseball with the kids in his neighborhood. Arnold channels his love of his hero, Mickey Kaline, in order to hit like a really far home run that causes Harold to lose his ball. And after all the kids praise him after the game, one of the kids is like, well, who's Mickey Kaline? We find out how much Arnold knows and respects and cares about this big lug of a baseball player. And so they're walking in the neighborhood, and so this baseball game on, it's revealed that Mickey Kaline is set to retire and he's about to play his last game. So Arnold is determined to see Mickey Kaline play his final game. So with the money he saved up and a little help from his grandpa, both he and Gerald go to the baseball field, or go to the last baseball game. They have really crappy seats, but Arnold's determined to get a good view. So he actually sneaks down to the lower levels, and while dodging the ushers and trying to keep himself from getting kicked out, he manages to not only see Mickey Kaline hit his final homer, but catch the game-winning ball. So he comes home the hero of the hour. He has this ball that everybody in the neighborhood wants to buy off him. And yet, even though he got everything he wanted, he has mixed feelings. He realizes that the only way he'll feel right is if he does something for Mickey Kaline, who was also having mixed feelings about his last game. I'm not going to spoil what Arnold does to help out Mickey Kaline. You could probably put two and two together based on what I've said and what the title of the actual episode is. But it's hard to really define why I like the baseball, but just by watching it, you can see it's a first season episode. I've made the comments before about the layout and the design and the look of the backgrounds and the colored pencil feel. And this episode has it in spades. I might be guilty of confessing I probably like just more looking at the episode than the actual episode itself. Not that the plot's not bad. It's a good episode. But just looking at it and just looking at the design of the baseball diamond, both the day and night scene when Arnold returns, they really went all out with a lot of the wide sloping shots of the city. The baseball is directed by Dan Povenmire, which is one of this man's earlier credits. If you're not familiar with the name Dan Povenmire, I guess you don't watch Phineas and Ferb. That's one of his shows. So this is one of his earlier credits. He was just a director in this one, but then he went on to do much bigger things for Disney, and I believe for SpongeBob as well. This might be a personal choice for me. I have a difficult time explaining why this episode deserves to be on the list, and I think it deserves to be on the list. It's maybe because it's more of a quieter episode, and again, it shows that action-oriented Arnold, or that mischievous Arnold, like the one from the list, where Arnold's not always a goody-goody. Like, he knows that they bought crappy seats, but he wants to see Mickey Kaline. What does he do? He goes to see Mickey Kaline. He goes to the lower levels. Even though he's not allowed, he does it anyway. Boys will be boys. I'm going to leave it there on that's why I think the baseball is a good season 1 episode. The final episode that I want to talk about is Pigeon Man. This is yet another urban legend episode. The urban legend episodes are really good, but probably one of the best urban legend episodes out of the entire season and out of the entire series. So, basic premise of this episode: when Arnold's carrier pigeon Chester falls ill, Arnold has to rely on the help of the Pigeon Man, which is this eccentric, soft-spoken, lonely man who lives by himself and prefers the company of birds. So we first find out about the Pigeon Man when Gerald tells the tale of this man that lives in a burnt-out building in the pet shop district. So after he tells the story, all the kids are like, "No, Arnold, don't go. He's crazy. He's crazy." Arnold's like, "I don't care. I want to save my bird." So he goes, meets the Pigeon Man, and he's not bad at all. Arnold hands over Chester, and when he returns to talk to the rest of the kids in the neighborhood, even when Arnold tells them that he's not so bad, he kind of smells, but he doesn't bite or anything, and he's kind of cool, it actually kind of confuses the other kids in the neighborhood. And Arnold, in fact, wants to spend even more time with the Pigeon Man because he's getting to know him not as this creepy urban legend, but as an actual person with feelings. So as Arnold decides to spend more time with the Pigeon Man, the other kids in the neighborhood, they still can't get over their bias and prejudice about this character. So they decided to go to the Pigeon Man's place while he's not there and trash the place. So when Arnold and Pigeon Man go back, the place is destroyed. Pigeon Man's like, "I need to leave this place. Thank you, Arnold, for reminding me that there are some good people in this world." And he exits in probably one of the most amazing animated and touching scenes in the entire series. This is a good episode. It's a quieter, more somber episode, a lot more so than a lot of the other entries on the list. It's sad, but also has a twinge of hopefulness to it. I know since Hey Arnold was announced to come back, there've been a lot of interesting articles that have popped up over the past few months, and one of them is concerning the final scene in The Pigeon Man. Again, for people who haven't seen the episode, I'm not going to spoil how the Pigeon Man exits, but that scene has been debated as an allegory to the Pigeon Man actually committing suicide because he's so fed up with the world. And I hate that theory. I think it undercuts the whole tone and the whole just feeling of the episode. I think anyone who believes that the Pigeon Man committed suicide is probably in the same camp that embraces the Hey Arnold theory. And I'm not going to go over the Hey Arnold theory in this podcast because I think it's a load of baloney. Maybe on my website, I'm trying to get into posting more show notes. So maybe I'll post a link to the Hey Arnold theory. I don't think it's worth my time really mentioning any more of it. But yeah, you could read that and decide on your own. But maybe it's a bit naive to take what happens at the end of the episode at face value. But it's really beautiful and touching, and it's a straight up Arnold episode. Like this is Arnold in his as Gerald would say, as a bold kid, but also someone caring who gets it done. Like he wants to save his bird, and he doesn't care if Pigeon Man is psycho or not. He wants to help him. So yeah, that's the Pigeon Man. So before they conclude this episode, I actually want to introduce a new segment into the show. I've been meaning to do this the past few episodes and I keep forgetting, but this time I'm going to remember. So I think the fans are getting really excited, myself included, for the new movie that's coming out in 2017. There's the fan art has just been exploding. Fan fiction is probably never been better. And I really want to put a spotlight on some of the newer stuff, or some of the stuff that's been showing up online. So I want to use this time to just give a shout out or spotlight some of the Hey Arnold fan things out there on the internet. So one of the things I've been following on, I guess it's the Hey Arnold Save the Jungle Movie Facebook fan page. I don't know if that's the exact name for it, but it's on Facebook. It's a fan page. I think you have to ask to be a member, but they usually respond in about a day or so. But on the site, it's generally a bunch of fans congregating. Right now, it's a lot of patting on the back because the whole point of the Facebook fan page was Save the Jungle Movie, and it's already been confirmed we're getting the Jungle Movie. So there's kind of really no point for that part of the Facebook name, but I guess they can't change it, so that's what it is. But you go on the site and there's a lot of people who occasionally post fan art and links to fan fiction. There's this one I've been following lately. It's a comic. I think it's a collab, and I'm gonna mispronounce these names, so I apologize in advance. So it's a collab fan comic by an Ingrid Ochoa and a Jenna Rose. Jenna Rose is also known as Azura 129. The title of the comic is Hiding Arnold, and it's a multi-chapter fan comic series where Arnold does something or inadvertently desecrates a Green Eyes artifact, and now the Green Eyes are out and want to kill him. So Arnold thinks it's best for him to hide out at Helga's place. So Helga is holding him up in her room and keeping him safe. And I think it's on chapter 2 right now. It's not finished yet, but I really admire the speed at which they churn out these chapters. It's not like they churn out one and then you have to wait a month and they churn out the other. No, it's consistent. They've been churning them out almost weekly, almost bi-weekly. And so it makes me believe they probably already have it done, and they're just sitting it out in a schedule, which I respect. I prefer having a finished project metered out consistently than making it up as you go, like a lot of fanfics do. But so I'm going to give a shout out to that. It's called Hiding Arnold. There's some links on the Facebook fan page, but I'm also going to post a link on my site to the DeviantArt page that this comic's connected to. So that's it. That concludes today's episode of the Vacant Lot podcast. Thank you so much for listening. As always, please, if you like the show, you can subscribe on iTunes. If you'd like to send me a line, you can send me an email at thevacantlotpodcast@gmail.com. I am also on Twitter at The Vacant Lot Show. I am also now on Google Play Music and also on Stitcher. And I hopefully soon will be on TuneIn as well. I'm trying to put myself out there on a few more platforms to make myself more accessible, because as someone had mentioned when I first opened the site, they're like, well, I don't use iTunes. And that's perfectly fine. Not everyone uses iTunes. So I'm making this accessible. If you want to listen to this, you can listen to it on my site at vacantlotpodcast.com or any of the other previous methods that I've mentioned, those are acceptable as well. So anyway, thank you so much for listening. Catch you later. Bye-bye. The song you are listening to is Sweatari by the band Escalate. Be sure to download their album The Pop Machine on iTunes. That's the band Escalate, E-S-C-A-L-A-T-E exclamation point.